Hello fellow bookworms, it's Katie, and today we have gathered at this late hour to talk about a book. It's getting pretty dark already. It's only 9 o'clock, really. I don't know, you guys, I had to wait until my flatmate went home for the holidays, so now I'm alone, which is fine for me. I like spending time alone. It means more time for reading. Anyways, Katie, stop the rambling. Nobody is interested in your private life. I'm here today to talk about Memory and Dream by Charles Lint. This is a book of the Newford series. It was originally published in 1993, I believe, or 1992. I'm not entirely sure. It's actually the first time that I'm really excited to talk about a book to you. You know, it's the first time in a really long time. I mean, I like making reviews. I mean, I wouldn't do it if I didn't like it, but it did feel like a chore, you know, with the recent books that I wasn't too into. Now I really loved this book, and I really want to talk to you about it today. So let's do it. First, start with a summarization of the plot, or as much as I can actually do it, because it's a bit complicated. We basically follow two plot lines. One is set in the present, which is in this book 1992, and it is about Isabel and her friend Alan, who she, you know, knows back from her college days, and who is a publisher, and he wants to publish an short story collection by a deceased friend, Isabel's former best friend, who has died 5 years prior to the events of that plotline. And he goes to her trying to persuade her to illustrate this edition of stories, because she's an artist. And she is kind of hesitant to do that. Reason for that we discover by following the second plotline, which is set 20 years prior to the other plotline. We follow Izzy, as she calls herself back then. We meet her in her early 20s. We follow her through the last 2 years of college, and we meet her right at the point where she gets invited by a very famous artist. It's called Vincent Rushkin. She gets invited to be his student. He wants to be her teacher, her tutor. She takes up that opportunity, and she learns a great deal. She learns a lot of things, but she has to discover that these things come at a price. He's a very cruel person sometimes. She has to discover that. He tells her that he can teach her to bring people, to bring beings, magical beings, across from a magical creativity realm that is called before to through her pictures to the real world. And Izzy, of course, dismisses that. She says, hey, that's kind of, he's kind of, you know, he's lost a little bit, a few of his marbles along the way. But then weird things start to happen, and, you know, we start to discover what happened to her that led to her dramatic change of her art style and led to her becoming a very reclusive person, turning her back on her friends, and what really happened to Kathy and why she died, and yeah, all of that. That was a little bit of a long summarization, but a lot of things happen in this book, and plot is a little bit difficult to explain because we follow these two plot lines and they are so much linked together, you know, and we follow so many people. There are so many characters in this book, or not that many, but we follow so many characters that are so deep, complex and deep, and their relationships are so complex. So it was a little bit difficult to actually, you know, summarize this plot. As you probably can guess with the two plot lines, the book takes a little bit of time to actually start going. The plot takes, it is a very slow moving plot, it is very slow paced. It takes a bit of time to actually get into it because there's a lot of mystery around it, there's a lot of hinting, and to get to the actual bottom of it, it takes the whole book, you know. But it takes a little bit to actually start it, and I think I was about 70-80 pages in into the book until I was like fully committed to it, and I was like, yes, I'm going to read this. This is going to be a great book and I'm going to love it. I actually really enjoyed this structure of the two plot lines because it means that we get to know these characters gradually, and we get to know their past, and we get to know their motives. It also serves as a device to create more tension and to create more mystery, because we gradually discover these characters. We discover them in their 40s, and we meet them in their early 20s, and we see how they changed so much in these 20 years, and you can't help to wonder, but what happened? What happened to them that they changed so much? What happened to them that they made the decisions that they made? And what are they talking about? And you just really want to discover that. For example, when we meet Alan at the beginning of the story, and he thinks about Isabel and how he always felt about Isabel, and then we see them together, and we experience how awkward it is between them, and how there was something between them, something happened between them, but we're not really sure about what, and what things led up to that, and how things changed before that. And you can't help but wonder what happened to them, and you really want to read on, and you really want to get down to the mystery of this entire book. And the theme of memory and dream is definitely always present, not just in the word choice, and not just because of the author mentioning memories and mentioning dreams all of the time. It's very much about, you know, what do we remember? How do the things that we remember, how do the things that we choose to remember change us, and how do they affect our lives, and how do they affect our actions and our decisions that we make? And that sometimes, you know, you don't really remember things correctly, that sometimes your imagination goes a bit on a rampage with your memories, and things that you think happened didn't actually happen the way that you remember them. Now let's talk about the writing real quick. It is told from a third-person narrative. Sometimes, it was a few times, and I did overlook it. I mean, it is a pretty massive book with 675 pages, so it wasn't too bad. It was like once or twice. That the POV shifted without an indicator, you know, it just in between paragraphs. We have multiple POVs. I mean, Isabel is the focus. Most scenes are told from Isabel's perspective, but Ellen, her friend, is also very, you know, a very present person. And there's also Cosette, and there's John, and Ruskin gets a POV. So we have a lot of POVs. As for the characters, we have Izzy, who is a very young, very naive, you know, college student. She's an artist. She has this hunger for knowledge. She has this hunger to make art and be better and being successful as well. We have Isabel, who is this more seasoned version of Izzy. She has experienced a great heartbreak, and which has led to her becoming more of a recluse. And she kind of lost touch with her friends, and she really wants to forget what happens. She just wants to forget the world, but she wants to hide from the world a little bit. But a thing I really enjoyed, and the thing I really loved about this book, is that Charles de Lint really manages to make these people leap off the page and, you know, give them depth. They all have believable motivations and character arcs. Yes, even the minor side characters have small little character arcs, and their actions are authentic throughout. I really enjoy how the dynamics and relationships between these characters are so deep and so complex, and so, you know, tangled. Okay, I just have to read to you the next thing that I've written on my notes, because I cannot, you know, say that right now without starting to laugh. So here it goes. Their dynamics and relationships are so complex. With just a few pages, he creates a thickly woven tapestry of interwoven memories, dreams, recollections, friendships, desires, and conflicts, and is so beautiful to read. I think that's one of the best sentences I've written ever in my notes for review. There you go. A small little thing that I want to mention also while talking about the characters is that the representation in this book for an early 90s novel is pretty darn good. This book deals heavily with mental health and depression, and for someone who has depression herself, I could identify with the person that had this depression very much because, well, she's gone through a lot. And I feel like in this book, depression is not used as a gimmick, or like a gimmick that wants to shock people, you know, and to draw some reaction from people. It is more used in a way to explain, hey, this happens to people, and this happens to this character, and this is how depression and mental health problems, you know, affect this person, and this is what happens when someone has mental health problems. This happens when someone has depression, and even when they try to get help, even when they try to go to therapy, you know, things might not work out for them, and you know, they need and this is what happens when they don't have a support system, and this is what happens when they feel like they can't talk to people about their problems, and this is what happens when they feel they can't open up to their friends about their problems. And it doesn't mean that they don't love their friends, but it just means that in society we are conditioned to think that we can't talk about our problems, that we can't talk about our mental health problems, that we can't talk about our depression. It's something that we still struggle, and it is damn 25 years later, 25 years since this damn book was published, and we still, in society, struggle with the same fucking problems. And that's a fucking problem in and of itself. So I really enjoyed the representation of mental health problems in this book. Also, you know, sometimes mental health problems, especially depression, in a book that also features artists, can be romanticized. As in, the artist has to suffer to create great art, which is stupid, it's bullshit, that's not true. And it wasn't in that book. This book did not romanticize mental health problems and depression. Talking about representation a little bit more, there were also brief touches on racism and socio-economical injustice, and how that shapes one's path in life, and how that determines so much of the chances you get in your life. How being born into wealth and being born into being white determines a lot of the chances that you get in your life. And to be honest, this book is 25 years old, more than 25 years old, and not much changed. We have not gotten a lot better as a society since then, which is quite sad to think about, actually, isn't it? Very briefly, let's talk about world building. Now, this is probably the one area that I had not exactly a problem with, but that I thought was a little bit weaker than, you know, plot, characters and writing, mostly because this is urban fantasy. So the existence of magic is a topic of debate in this very book, and everything that you get to know about magic gets told to you through exposition, and normally I would say, that's a little bit uncreative, but in this context it didn't bother me too much because I was so preoccupied with the characters and everything else. Since this is urban fantasy, the world is pretty similar to our own. The city of Newford is fictional, so we don't actually have that city, you know, in the real world, but Lint still manages to make it a rich, detailed experience, kind of, I don't know. I mean, the city still feels rich and real and has lots of mythical elements to it, so there is no shortage of fantasy elements in this book. So in conclusion, I really loved this book. I gave it 5 stars. I very much enjoyed it. I would highly recommend you check out Lint. I already loved the Newford short story collection, which is called Dreams Underfoot. This is also fucking good, and I cannot wait to read the next book in the series. But honestly, it didn't feel like a 675 page book. I've read it in 6 days, so I've read about 120 10-ish pages per day, so it really didn't feel that long. Yeah, so that was it for today. I fear this is going to be a rather longer video than I actually planned. I hope you enjoyed this video. I really enjoyed this book. If you like fantasy, I would highly recommend you check out Charles Lint. You probably have to search for his books in used bookshops or on Amazon, but it's worth it. I promise. Okay, that was it for today. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Hope you're reading something magical, something wonderful, something that sweeps you right off your feet. And I will see you soon. Bye!